start. All right. Good afternoon and welcome to Miss Walker's Story Time. We are going to continue reading How to Train Your Dragon. This is a great book that my nephew turned me on to, and we are on chapter 5 of this book. Chapter 5. Now, if you get into the story and you want to back up, remember you can always go to my YouTube channel and check out the playlist, How to Train Your Dragon, and you will be able to listen to the other chapters too. All right. So be sure your mics are all muted just in case somebody walks through or makes a loud noise so it doesn't come across. All right. And I'm going to change my screen now so that you guys can see my screen. And then I will switch over to the book because not only do I have a hard copy of this book, but I also borrowed it from the library as an e-reader because I wanted you guys to be able to see some of the cool little pictures that are drawn throughout the book by Hiccup. So we are on chapter 5, the chat. A chat with Old Wrinkly. And here was the picture from the previous page. Stock up the vast. The next morning, Hiccup checked on the dragon under his bed, and it was still asleep. His mother, Valhallarama, asked him for at breakfast, "How did initiation go yesterday, dear?" Hiccup said, "Oh, it was fine. I caught my dragon." "That's nice, dear," said Valhallarama. It replied vaguely. Stoic the Vast looked up from his briefly from his bowl and boomed, "Excellent, excellent," before getting back to the important task of shoveling food into his mouth. After breakfast, Hiccup went to sit on the front step beside his grandfather, who was smoking a pipe. It was a beautiful, cold, clear winter's morning. Not a breath of wind or sea around as flat as glass. Old Wrinkly blew out smoke rings contentedly as he watched the sun coming up. Hiccup shivered and chucked stones into the bracken. Neither of them spoke for a long time. At last, Hiccup said, "I got a dragon." "I said you would, didn't I?" replied Old Wrinkly, very pleased with himself. Old Wrinkly had taken up soothsaying at his old age, mostly unsuccessfully. Looking into the future was a complicated business, so he was particularly pleased that he'd gotten this right. "Something extraordinary, you said," complained Hiccup. "A truly unusual dragon, you said. An animal that would make me stand out in a crowd." "Absolutely," agreed Old Wrinkly. "The entrails are undeniable." "The only extraordinary thing about this dragon," continued Hiccup, "is how extraordinarily small it is, in that it is super unusual. I even I'm even more of a laughing stock than ever." "Oh dear," said Old Wrinkly, chuckling in his wheezy way through his pipe. Hiccup looked over at him reproachfully. Old Wrinkly hurried and turned the laugh into a cough. "Size is all relative, Hiccup," said Old Wrinkly. "All dragons are super small compared to the real sea dragon. A real sea dragon is 50 times as big as a little creature. A real sea dragon from the bottom of the ocean can swallow 10 large rocking ships in one gulp and not even notice. A real sea dragon is cruel, careless mystery like a mighty ocean itself. One moment of calm is a scallop, and the next is raging like an octopus." "Well, here on Burke," said Hiccup, "where we haven't any sea dragons to compare anything with, my dragon is considerably smaller than everybody else's." "You're getting off the point." "Am I?" said Old Wrinkly. "The point is, I don't see how I'm ever going to become a hero," Hiccup said gloomily. "I'm the least heroic boy in the whole hooligan tribe." "Oh, pshaw, that's ridiculous. This is a ridiculous tribe," fumed Old Wrinkly. "Okay, you're not what we call a born hero. You're not big or tall enough or charismatic like Snoutlout. But you're just going to have to work at it. You're going to have to learn how to be the hero the hard way." "Whew. Anyway," said Old Wrinkly, "it might just be what the tribe needs, a change of leadership style." Because the thing is, times are changing. We can't get uh, any we can't get away with being bigger and more violent than everyone else anymore. Imagination, that's what we need, and that's what you've got. A hero of the future is going to have to be clever and cunning, not just a big lump with overdeveloped muscles. He's going to have to stop everyone from quarreling among themselves and get them to face the enemies together. How am I going to persuade people or persuade anybody to do anything, said Hiccup. They're calling me Hiccup the Useless. That is not a great name for a military leader. You have to see the bigger picture, Hiccup, continued Old Wrinkly, ignoring him. You've been called a few names. You're not a natural bushy ball. Who cares? These are very little things in the grand scheme of things. It's all very well for you to say there are very little problems, said Hiccup crossly. I have a lot of little problems. I have to train this super small dragon in time for Thor's Thursday or be thrown out of the Harry Hooligan tribe forever. Ah, yes, said old Rickley thoughtfully. There's a book on the subject, isn't there? Remind me. How does great Professor Meathead University think you train a dragon? He thinks you should yell at it, said Hiccup, gloomily, chucking stones again. Show the beast who's master by sheer charismatic force of your personality, that sort of thing. I have about as much charisma as a stranded jellyfish, and yelling is another thing I'm useless at. Yes, said old Wrinkly, but maybe you'll have to train a dragon the hard way. You know a great deal about dragons, don't you, Hiccup? All that dragon watching you've been doing over the years? That's a secret, Hiccup said uncomfortably. I've been talking to you that I've seen you talking to them, said old Wrinkly. That's not truth, protested Hiccup, going bright and red in the face. Okay then, said old Wrinkly, calmly smoking his pipe. It's not true. There was a bit of silence. See him sitting down here on the log as they're talking? It is true, admitted Hiccup, but for Thor's sake, don't tell anybody. They wouldn't understand. Talking to dragons is a highly unusual skill, said old Wrinkly. Maybe you can train a dragon better by talking to it than yelling at it. That's sweet, said Hiccup. And very touching thought. However, a dragon is not a fluffy creature like a dog, a cat, or a pony. A dragon is not going to do what I say just because you say pretty please, from what I know about dragons. I should say that yelling was a pretty good method, but it has its limitations, doesn't it? Old Wrinkly pointed out. I would say that yelling it was highly effective on a dragon smaller than a sea lion, but positively suicidal if you try it on anything larger. Why don't you come up with an alternative training schemes yourself? You might be able to add something to old Professor Yokobish's book. I've often thought that book needs a little something extra. I can't put my finger quite on it. Words, said Hiccup. That book needs a lot more words. Chapter 6. Meanwhile, in the deep ocean. Meanwhile, deep in the ocean, not so very far from the Isle of Berk, a real sea dragon, such as old Wrinkly had been describing, lay sleeping in the seabed. He was indescribably large. He had been there so long that he almost seemed to be part of the ocean floor itself, a great underwater mountain covered with shells and barnacles. Some of his limbs were half buried in the sand. Generation after generation of little hermit crabs had been born and had died on the dragon's ears. Hundreds and hundreds of years he'd slept because he had a rather large meal. He had had the luck to catch a Roman legion capping off the hilltop. A legion has, like, I think, 1,000 men in it. They were completely cut off, and he had spent an enjoyable afternoon wolfing down the whole lot of them, from commanding officer to the lowest private. Horses, chariots, shields, spears, and the entire lot went down the ravenous reptilian gullet. The gullet's the stomach or the throat. And while things such as the golden chariot wheels are an additional source of fiber to the dragon's diet, they do take some time to digest. The dragon had crawled down into the depths of the ocean and gone into a sleep coma. Dragons stay in this suspended state for an eternity, half dead, half alive, buried under a fathom after fathom of icy cold seawater. Not a muscle of this particular dragon had moved for 6 or 7 centuries. But the previous week, a killer whale who had chased the seals unexpectedly deep was surprised to notice a slight movement under the eyelid of the dragon's eye. An ancestral memory stirred in the brain's whale, and he swam away from there as fast as his fins could carry him. A week later, the sea around the Dragon Mountain, which was previously been teeming with crabs and lobsters and shoals of fish, those are schools of fish, was a great underwater desert. Not a mollusk scurred, not a scallop shimmied. The only sign of life for miles and miles was the rapid jerking of both the dragon's eyelids and the fluttering up and down as if the dragon had suddenly gone into a lighter sleep and was dreaming of who knows what dark dreams. So, do you guys think that that might be foreshadowing something that's coming? Do you think that might be telling us something that's going to come? What do you think? What do you think? Do you think it might be telling us something that's going to happen with this giant sea dragon? Evan nods his head yes. Christopher thinks so too. Ivan, what do you think? I think he's typing. Oh, Naomi, I like the dog book. Yep, Ivan agrees. All right, back to our story. Chapter 7. Toothless wakes up. Toothless woke up about 3 weeks later. Fishlegs and Hiccup were in Hiccup's house. Everybody else was out, so Hiccup decided to take the opportunity to check Toothless' baskets. He pulled it out from under the bed, and a thin fume of blue gray smoke was drifting out from under the lid. Fishlegs whistled. He's awake, all right, said Fishlegs. Here we go. Hiccup opened the basket. The smoke billowed out and made Hiccup and Fishlegs cough. Hiccup fanned it away. His small eyes had stopped watering, and he could make out a small, ordinary dragon looking at him with enormous, innocent glass green eyes. Hello, Toothless, said Hiccup, in what he hoped was a good accent of Dragonese. What are you doing? Fishlegs asked curiously. Dragonese is punctuated by shrill shrieks and popping sounds, most extraordinarily spoken by a human. And on this page over here that I'm showing you, is learning to speak Dragonese, and it is Hiccup's instructions on how you speak Dragonese. Back to our story. I was just talking to it, mumbled Hiccup, and very embarrassed. Just talking to it, gasped Fishleg's astonishment. What do you mean, talking to it? You can't talk to it. It's an animal, for Thor's sake. Oh, shut up, Fishleg, said Hiccup impatiently. You're frightening it. Toothless huffed and puffed and blew out some smoke rings. He inflated his neck to make him look bigger, which was something dragons would do when they were scared or angry. Eventually, he got up the courage to unfurl his wings and flap into Hiccup's arm. He walked his way up to Hiccup's shoulder, and Hiccup turned his face towards him. Toothless pressed his forehead to press Hiccup's forehead and gazed deeply and solemnly into Hiccup's eyes. They stayed there, snout to snout, without moving for about 60 seconds. Hiccup had to blink a lot because the gaze of a dragon is hypnotic and gives the unnerving feeling that it is sucking your soul away. Hiccup was just thinking, wow, that was amazing. I'm really making contact here. When Toothless bent down and bit him on the arm, Hiccup let out a yelp and threw Toothless off of them. Fish, hissed Toothless, hovering in the air in front of Hiccup. Want fish now? I haven't got any fish, Dragon Hiccup said in Dragonese, rubbing his arm. Luckily, Toothless didn't have any teeth, but Dragon still had powerful jaws, and it was still painful. Toothless bit him on the other arm. Fish, he said. Toothless again. Are you okay? Said Fishlegs. I can't believe I'm asking this, but what is he saying? He wants to eat, replied Hiccup. grimmingly rubbing both arms as he tried to make a voice sound pleasant, not to dominate the creature by sheer force of his personality, as Gobber had said. But we have no fish. Okay, then, eat, eat. He made a lunge for Fiddlesticks, who streaked to the nearest wall to yowl in terror. Hiccup managed to grab Toothless by the tail as he flew off in pursuit. The dragon struggled wildly, shouting, "Want fish now! Want food now! Cats are yummy! Want food now!" "We don't have any fish," repeated Hiccup from gritted teeth, feeling his calmness deserting him. "You can't eat the cat. I like him." Fiddlesticks mewed indignantly from the beam of the high roof. They put Toothless in Stork's bedroom, where there was a mouse problem. For a while he was happy, swooping after the desperately squeaking mice, but then he got bored and started attacking the mattress. "Stop," said Hiccup. His feathers flew in all directions. Toothless replied by throwing the remains of one of the recently deceased mice right in the middle of Starkup's pillow. "Ugh." "Ugh," said Storic the Vast, who entered the room at that very moment. Toothless launched himself at Storic the Vast's beard, which he mistook for a chicken. "Get him off," said Storic. "He doesn't do what I say," said Hiccup. "Yell very loudly at him," Storic shouted, "very loudly." Hiccup yelled as loudly as he could. "Please, will you stop eating my father's beard?" Hiccup suspected Toothless took absolute notice, no notice whatsoever. "I knew I'd be useless yelling," thought Hiccup. "Drop the floor. Hold on. Drop to the floor, you ribbly terrible reptile," yelled Stork. Toothless dropped to the floor. "You see, that's how to deal with a dragon." Newt's Breath and Hook's Fang, Stork's hunting dragons, were padding into the room. Toothless stiffened and paced as they paced around him, their yellow eyes glinting evilly. Each was about the size of a leopard, and they were delighted by his arrival, as a couple of gilliant cats might be for a very new, cute little kitten. "Greetings, fellow fire breather," hissed Newtsworth as he gave the wiggling newcomer a sniff. "We must wait," purred Fooktang miraculously, "until we're alone, and then we can give you a proper welcome." He gave a vicious swipe at Toothless with one paw. The claw, like a chicken knife, just nicked Toothless on the rump, and the little dragon howled and jumped into Hiccup's tunic until only his tail was poking out of the neck. "Hook Fang," bellowed Stork. "My claw slipped," whined Hook Fang. "Get out of here before I make you into two handbags," yelled Stork. And Newt's Breath and Hook Fang slunk out, muttering obscene dragon curses under their breath. "As I was saying," said Storic the Vast, "that's how you deal with dragons." Storic was looking at Toothless with an uncharacteristic anxiety. "Son," said Storic, hoping there might be some sort of mistake, "is this your dragon?" "Yes, Father," Hiccup admitted. It's very small, isn't it?" Stoic was not an observant person, but even he could not fail to notice that this dragon was really remarkably small. "And it hasn't got any teeth." There was an awkward silence when Fixed Legs came to Hiccup's rescue. "That's because it's an unusual breed," said Fish Legs. A unique or violent species called a toothless daydream. Distant relationships of the monstrous nightmare, but far more ruthless and so rare they practically extinct." "Really?" Stork surveyed Toothless Daydream doubtfully. "It looks like a common or garden to me." With respect, Chief," said Fishlegs, "that's where you're wrong. To an amateur eye, and indeed to its prey, it looks exactly like a common or garden. But if you look closer, the characteristic daydream markings," Fish pointed to the wart on the end of Toothless' nose, "marks it out from the more ordinary breed." "By Thor, you're right," said Stork. "And it's not just your average toothless daydream either," Fishleg said, getting carried away now. "This particular dragon is of royal blood." "No," said Stork, very impressed. Stork was a terrific snob. Yes, said Fishleg solemnly. Your son has only gone and burglared the offspring of the king dragonfaggers himself, the reptilian ruler of the wild dragon cliff. And the royal daydreams tend to start out small, but grow into creatures of impressive and even gargantuan size. Just like you, Hiccup, said Stork, giving him a great laugh and ruffling his son's hair. Stork's tummy gave out a plaintive rumble like a distant underground explosion. Time for supper, I think. Clear up this mess, will you, boys? Stork strode off, relieved he had faith in his son restored. Thanks, Fishlegs. You were inspired. Not at all, said Fishlegs. I owed you for after setting you up with a fight with Snoutloud. Father's going to find out at some point. Anyway, though, not necessarily. Look at all the talking you're doing with Toothless Daydream here. That is incredible and unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. You'll be training him next to no time. I was talking to him all right, but he doesn't listen to a word I said. When he was going to bed, Hiccup didn't want to leave Toothless in front of the fire with Newt's breath and Hook Fang. Can I take him to bed with me? He asked Story. Dragons is a working animal. Too much hugging and kissing will make him lose his voracious streak. But Newt's breath will kill him if I leave him alone with them. Newt's foot gave an appreciative growl. It would be my pleasure, he hissed. Nonsense, said Storic, unaware of Newt's last remark. He didn't speak Dragonese. He gave Newt's breath a friendly cuff around the horns. Newt breath just wants to play. That's sort of rough and tumble good for a young dragon. Makes him learn to stick up for himself. Hook Fang extended his claws like switchblades and drummed them against the hearth. Hiccup pretended to say good night to Toothless by the fire and smuggled him into his bedroom under his tunic. You must be absolutely quiet, he told Toothless sternly as they climbed into bed. The dragon nodded eagerly. In fact, he snored loudly the entire night, but Hiccup didn't care. Hiccup spent the whole of the winter on Burke and at various states of very cold, ranging to fairly chilly to absolutely freezing. That night, too many layers. At night, too many layers were considered sissy, so Hiccup generally lay awake for a couple hours until he shivered himself into a light sleep. Now, though, Hiccup stretched his feet out against Toothless' back. He felt waves of heat coming off of the little dragon, gradually creeping into his legs and warming his feet, cold stomach, heart, even traveling up to his head. He hadn't been truly warm for almost 6 months. His ears burned contently. It would have taken the snoring of 6 strong dragons to have woken Hiccup. He was so deeply did he sleep that night. And we will end there and begin with chapter 8 um, tomorrow. So let me change my screens. All right, guys.